Hey everybody, Tracy Brown here from the What Is Mine to Do Facebook group from Intentional Inclusion and Stained Glass Spirit. But mostly with this Momentum series, we are focused on the What Is Mine to Do group, specifically asking the question, what is mine to do to interrupt or end race-based hatred and violence? In all the work that I do, other than what is mine to do, we look at all aspects of diversity and how we can create environments where all kinds of people are included. But with what is mine to do, we specifically focus on race based hatred and violence. And there's a reason for that, right? It's the hardest one for us to talk about and to navigate. And many of us are have very limited skills, let alone comfort, talking about racism, or race relations. And so at the What Is Mine to Do Facebook group, that is what we specifically focus on. Momentum is a series where in 20 minutes or less, I share some information and ideas with you because it's time for us to build momentum in healing the consciousness that allows for racism and ending the behaviors that reflect race based hatred and race based violence. So, tonight, I'm going to share with you some information from a book I wrote back in 1998. It's a long, long, long time ago. And the book was titled Breaking the Barrier of Bias, the Subtle Influence of Bias and What You Can Do About It. And it is out of print now, but a few days ago, I was looking for something else, came across it, started reading it. It's like, ooh, there's some really good stuff there. So, in the section about understanding bias, I shared four challenges that people who often are willing to recognize how bias shows up, but there are four challenges that make that more difficult, right? And so challenge number three is the one I'm going to share with you tonight, because I think, especially as it relates to the assumptions that we make about race and ethnicity, this one really applies. So, challenge number three. What else creates a challenge for those of us who want to learn to recognize our biases? Generally, most of us are uncomfortable admitting our lack of knowledge. We don't want to admit that we don't really know what it's like to be a person who was raised in a different cultural or with different cultural norms based on race or ethnicity. We don't want to admit that really everyone's not just like me, right? Everybody's really not exactly like me, a clone of me or a replica of me. And there's some things that I might need to know. So, um, if I am part of the group the norms are set around, I don't often need to know very much about the norms, the preferences, expectations, or practices of other groups. I'm ignorant, but it doesn't matter because I know what I need to know to do what I need to do. Then someone joins my team or department at work. I expect them to fit into what I'm accustomed to. I don't understand why they wouldn't be comfortable going to the local hangout after work, or, going and hanging out with a group of us in a social setting. I think and label them as antisocial when they don't attend company events. I think they must have a problem when they don't accept my invitations to social events, or, maybe they really do just have something else to do. I might even think They're more racist than I am when I see them eating lunch with or talking with other employees who are more like them than I am. One of the things I'm missing in that situation is an understanding of what their daily experience is like working in this environment where I'm already comfortable and successful. I'm already accepted. It works for me. How is this bias, you might be asking? Well, it's the result of our own biases that we expect others to feel the way that we do. It's the impact of bias when we expect others to interpret situations the same way we do. And when we expect others to like the things we like and feel comfortable in the situations where we feel comfortable, that's the impact of bias. However, because we are not knowledgeable of the many other ways to view the experience or the information being discussed, we just don't have a paradigm which allows us to interpret the data differently. If someone tries to share with us a different reality, we usually are pretty quick to dismiss it, correct it, or ignore it. Instead, we reinforce our reality as right, as good, as effective, or as the required way of being. All of this results in us being protected from having to learn about another way to approach this situation. We don't have to admit we never heard about another way to look at it. We don't have to learn another way to deal with whatever the situation is. We don't have to expand our knowledge base in any way. So this challenge of not either not realizing that we are kind of living in an echo chamber, that if we're a part of the group the norms are set around, we don't have to learn multiple ways to deal with things. And the example in the book is pretty much framed in the workplace, but the same thing is true whether it's in your church or your school or in the neighborhood you live in. I live on a cul de sac, and there are, only 12 homes on the block I live in. And there are some things I have noticed. I'm the most recent person to have moved in, and many of the families on the cul-de-sac have been their homes for quite a long time. And so there are little subtle things that I've noticed, and no one's mean. And in this case, it's not race related, or at least I don't think it is. It's just that I'm new in the environment, and when it's okay, like how early is it okay to put your trash out? And even on a bulk trash day, there's a different approach and a different judgment about how early you can put your bulk trash out because it will make the neighborhood look bad, compared to where I lived before, which was a very, very nice neighborhood. It's just there's some patterns. And when I was talking to my one of my direct next door neighbors, and she was explaining to me, oh well, yeah, this is just kind of how it is. Or if you might not want to do that because the neighbor in that house and that house, won't like it. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, it's all part of kind of getting to know the norms here. But I imagine that over time, there are going to be some things and some conversations I have with people that may challenge some of those norms. Not because I'm trying to be difficult, but simply because I'm going to take a stand for what works for me, either on my block or at the park a block away, just the overall neighborhood. And when we talk about race, especially in groups, this is the part that most of us miss. When someone from a different racial or ethnic group shows up and they're in the minority, if we don't ask questions, if we just assume they're going to fit in and feel comfortable, we will likely miss the very important things that would help them feel like they are being accepted as part of the group. In what I read, I used a couple of examples of the assumptions that people who are in the majority make. Assumptions about, oh, well, let's go to this particular restaurant, or let's go to this particular part of town, or assumptions about which grocery stores people shop in. And I remember one of the workplaces I was in many years ago now, but there were assumptions made about, oh, well, everybody shops at one of these two grocery stores. But there were a group of African American employees who lived in a part of town where those grocery stores would not even build stores. And so they weren't the neighborhood store. They weren't the store that supported community events in their community, and they weren't familiar with or friendly with the products in the store, the people who work in those stores. And to top it off, in one of those stores, the chain that was mentioned and people frequently praised, a couple of the black employees had gone into that particular chain near work several times and had been followed around the store as if they were there to steal or to cause trouble. And the employees who were in the majority, in this case, the white employees, when they heard that story, they were very quick to say, oh no, you must have been doing something. Or, how were you dressed that day? Like putting the blame on the African American employee when in reality, they went directly from work. So they were appropriately attired, and they just thought they would stop and get groceries there and then go home. And it was a horrible experience. And so for the majority of the white employees, they just couldn't believe that was possible and really blamed it on the employee. So it's really a representation of lack of knowledge, lack of exposure, and what we have to do if we want to build momentum to interrupt or end race based hatred, race based discomfort, race based stereotypes, then we need to be willing to have conversations with people who are different from us, not conversations that are interrogations or accusations of things being good or bad, but conversations that are based on curiosity and conversations that are committed to believing what people tell you about the experience they are having. And that is a two-way or a multi-way conversation. So if I am talking to someone who is from a different race or ethnic group, racial category or ethnic group, I want to hear their story or their experience, and I commit to believe that what they say about what they've experienced and how they feel about it is honest and true, especially when their experience and their feelings are different from my own. And finally, the other reason I say it's important that this is a two-way or multi-way conversation is this. Sometimes people who are white will say, I am curious about your experience as a Latina, or I'm curious about your experience as an immigrant who was born in India, or Egypt or some place outside of my experience. They will say, I'm curious, and they will then ask a series of questions. But the white person also has to be willing to share their experience and their perspective from a place of this is simply my experience. I am not saying it is right. I am not saying it is better. I am not saying it is the standard. I am simply sharing this is what I have experienced, and let's see where we have common ground. And then let's learn from each other about how to navigate in a multi ethnic, multicultural, multi generational world by knowing more about each other. So that's our momentum of tips for today, to really think about when you are committing to interrupting or ending race based hatred and violence, but you are stuck in judging or evaluating everything from your own experience, your own racial experience, your own ethnic experience or background, and forgetting that other people have other experiences. My name is Tracy Brown. I am the founder and moderator of the What Is Mine to Do group, and I sure hope you'll join us there. Have a great evening.